Hi friends, welcome to my video. My name is Joff and this is Test-Driven Development Screencast. So the point of this video is to make a little retrospective on the entire series of test-driven development that I've recorded so far and that you had a chance to look at them on YouTube. So I simply wanted to go through the entire thing to explain what happened, do a little retrospective, and also at the beginning I would like to also announce what I'm planning to do next and how I'm planning to drive this my YouTube channel, what you are gonna be able to see in the following period. So to begin with, I wanted to just say a few words about the test-driven development in general as a skill. I see the test-driven development as a skill, as many folks see it as tool or something else, because it takes literally few minutes to grasp the basics and the theory behind it, but it really takes lots of time in order to master it and to practice it well. So in that sense, I see it as a skill, and the point is that once you get used to the test-driven development and you start using it daily, like majority of the people just never look back into like standard way of coding afterwards. So during this entire series that are now available on my YouTube channel, we've seen two basically main approaches that were presented. One was the outside-in test-driven development, and then the other one was the inside-out. So when I say outside-in or inside-out, I basically mean the way of evolving the entire system. So how we are actually approaching and how we are designing the system. We are gonna talk about that a little bit afterwards. Also, these entire exercises, it was the same exercise, but I just used the same exercise in order to see and to be able to compare afterwards the two approaches, how they are gonna differ and so on. But I plug both of those into an Android context. Now, the test-driven development as a skill, it's irrelevant where you're gonna be applying that. I just happen to work on Android, and that's the area that I know the most, so I was able to apply it there and present it there. But those the practices that I presented are basically language agnostic, and they shouldn't matter where you are gonna be using them, and also language agnostic, so that and platform agnostic, so you can basically use the same practices regardless on the language or the platform or whatever you are doing. So next, I would like to also announce what I'm planning to do in the following period. I'm also thinking to ship weekly episodes, but now I want to start working on something real, a real project that we can witness how these extreme programming practices are going to be applied, including test-driven development, evolutionary design, and how to actually start shipping to to the actual customers little slices and then get feedback, work in shorts, in small cycles, and see how that's gonna work. So I want to present an entire like real life, real world demo or something that how that's gonna work. So I'm planning to make something like Twitter like app, something very sort of simple, where we are gonna have some sort of registration, and you're gonna have your profile, and then you will be able to post things there, and then you will be able to follow other people, and then you can see their posts and reply to them and that kind of things. We'll see how everything is gonna go. I just have little scratch I'm gonna present in some of the following episodes, because as we are gonna start but the idea is to work on an Android project and a backend project. So for the Android, I'm planning to also use new technologies like, let's say, Flow or Jetpack Compose. So on the way, we'll be able to learn those things as well, as like besides the idea of using these practices as like real world demo development of application and stuff, we'll be able to learn these new things along the way. I said, why not? And then for the backend, so it's gonna be also Android client, but also I'm gonna be developing the backend for this. And for the backend, I'm planning to do a Spring Boot up. Maybe I'm gonna plug Ktor there. We'll see. I just have some scratches. I don't have much plans, but I'll see how everything goes on the way. I'm gonna start obviously with the Android client, and then I'm gonna work on the backend. Yeah, so the idea is to also set up for the Android, I mean, for both products. I mean, it's gonna be one product, but like different client and a backend. So I'm gonna be also, I'll present how we can set up the continuous delivery and how we can, what's the point of, like, for example, making, whenever we push, we want to see that to the Play Store, or like for the backend, most probably we're gonna Dockerize that, and then the Docker is gonna be deployed somewhere. I'm sure what I'm gonna do with the Android client, because I've done that like multiple times and I know. But for the backend, I haven't done this deployment so far, but I'm gonna learn on the way. Then I'm also thinking, and I really need your feedback on that, whether I should also do something like Twitch while doing this, and would you see a value to make this more interactive in a way? So if I, for example, start streaming on Twitch when developing this, is it gonna be valuable maybe to ask questions and to discuss on the way? So that was about the announcement and the introduction of what happened in a nutshell, but I also want to point out a little bit on the actual approaches, what was different, what I see as a difference, what I prefer regularly, and so on. So as I said, test-driven development is something that takes lots of time to practice and in order to get used to it, but once you get used to it, you're not gonna look back. And to do, as we saw in the both exercises, to do the test-driven development efficiently, we are using so-called test doubles. So now there is many people, whenever they're talking about the test doubles, they refer to them as mocks. So I want to be more precise in that sense. So for me, test doubles are like all the substitutes that we are able to use, but the mocks are only like one sort of kind of test double. I've explained that in one of the episodes, one of the introductory episodes when I started with the Ouside-In, and I would invite you to look at that to see more details. But essentially, there are several kinds of test doubles. There is dummy, there is stub, there is mock, there is spy, and there is a fake. So we haven't used all of them across the entire series, but we used like most of them, so you can actually see. I'm trying to also articulate nice when I'm using particular test double. I'm trying to say, okay, this is this kind of test double. So next, we've started with the Ouside-In, and at the very beginning, before I started doing any code, I presented something that's called sequence diagram. Now, diagrams are not per se anyhow related to the test-driven development, but for me at least, when I was starting with the test-driven development, the sequence diagram was something that helped me a lot. So basically, when you're doing the Ouside-In, as I said, when I say Ouside-In, we are designing the system from the outside towards the internals. So the process is like, with the sequence diagram, I can sort of make an approximation of where I want to go and what approximately I'm gonna have in my design, but it's not particularly, I'm not gonna follow that like 100%. Maybe some, as I'm gonna be developing the code, I see something that might be different, or I want to push some responsibility somewhere else and I don't have that drawn in the diagram. So it's just an approximation that anyway is gonna go to the trash after I come up with a solution. It's not something valuable, but for the beginning, it is something that I found really valuable. Then, as I said, when designing using the Ouside-In approach, first we are starting with the acceptance test. And now if you compare the acceptance test with the tests that we came up with the inside out, they're sort of fairly similar. So the acceptance test uses the real instances of the all of the entire design, except the boundaries. So for the boundaries, we are using fake, which was sort of in memory, let's say, service, or like in memory, some sort of in memory inventory, and then the way how we solve that boundary, that the communication that's gonna be happening in the real world, like for example calls to backend or calls to database, how this in-memory fake is gonna tell us that the truth. We used contract tests. So the contract is sort of that makes sure that whatever the in-memory implementation does will be happening with the real implementation as well. We also used something that's very specific when doing the Ouside-In. So we started with a acceptance test, and as we are going, so it really exercises the entire solution from the outside. So we are just passing the values that are going into the system and then making assertions on the output. So we are seeing if the output is like so. We don't care what is the internal. So as we go internally, we are designing the inside of the system. What I was using is like, and what normally people use are mocks, and we saw mocking, and we used mocking libraries in that approach. But that was really to my in my view, it was really light mocking. It was not really heavy mocking. And in a sense, I don't see that as a problem. And what we were doing, essentially, we were sort of stubbing out a behavior that we were expecting, like for example, for the current test, we were stubbing out behavior from collaborator, and then we focus on the collaborator afterwards. If you like, there are different approaches based on the language. What I used in Kotlin particularly, or in Java, for example, I'm using mocking library, and basically I can make a mock of a real type that I'm gonna be that I'll implement later, for example, and that way I avoid making interfaces out of each type by using this library. On the other hand, what I could do, for example, I could for each type create an interface and then make the mock myself, or like whatever test double that I want. But that's gonna be essentially more maintenance, I would say, on the way to like as I go, I'll have to maintain more. I mean, anyway, there is always a trade-off. Either I mean, the tests are also some part of the code, so we will have to do some maintenance anyway. If I go by mocks, I have to be really careful, because like the mocking script, if it starts becoming too big, then I'm gonna have too much work maintaining this mocking script, and that's not okay. And mainly why people complain about mocks is essentially that. That afterwards they'll have to maintain a mocking script that it's not really, it makes the tests brittle, so it messes up with the actual implementation of the things, how everything works. So yeah, it is a trade-off, I would say. But also another thing is that at least what was true for me when I was starting with test-driven development, I was mocking things that I shouldn't have mocked at that time. For example, there is these data transportation objects, or value objects, as you want. So those things, for example, or exceptions, those domain types, you should never mock those. So instead of making mock for that, what we should do is actually make a real instance for that. Create the data as it is, and then also sometimes it is not it's not rare when, for example, we have some sort of value object that has too many properties, and then for particular test only few of them are relevant. So instead of, for example, making, for example, in a test, instantiating the entire thing, passing all those values that are not relevant. There are techniques, and I think I presented, like, for example, a builder pattern. We can use the builder for creating those data types only for the tests. And then essentially we can use only, we can apply only the relevant details for that test. So we can make the test, really narrow and reveal the intent. Also, another thing that was happening with the Ouside-In was we didn't do much refactoring in the loop of test-driven development. Like we go red, green, and then refactor. This refactoring step was not really present, not much, because we were designing most of the things in the red phase. So we start with a failing test and it's not compiling, and in order to make it compile, we are making many design decisions at that stage. So that's why afterwards in the refactoring stage we don't have much to do. So it's not that like we abandon that entirely, but it's not many things. Not many things are happening in the refactoring stage. Another thing that is sort of kind of obvious in the Ouside-In is that because we're using mocking libraries, I'm talking particularly about the Kotlin, about the exercises that I've done. Because of the mocking libraries, the tests are slightly slower, because it takes time in order for all these mocks to create those instances when the test is running and then run and so on. And because of that, we were not running all of the tests all the time. So as I was going, I was running, for example, a particular test that I'm currently working on, test case, and then, for example, I would go back and run the acceptance test to see where to continue. So the acceptance test was something that I was using as a North Star to tell me where to continue. And then once the acceptance test was working, I knew that the entire solution is done or ready to for example, plug and play afterwards. On the contrary, with the inside out approach, we started off from the inside and then started evolving everything towards the outside, towards the boundaries of the system. So we actually started with the algorithm. We started working with what's the piece that the minimum thing, that what's the actual functionality, the actual algorithm that we are going to work on, and then evolve, like start making collaborators push different things somewhere else. We something that is that was also interesting in this approach is what's known in the test-driven development as zombies approach. So I'm gonna present here a little example. So here we have, if you take a look at the first letters vertically, this reads zombies. Right? So it means like we start first with a 0, then 1, many, then boundary behavior, interfaces, exceptions, simple scenarios, simple solutions. So we started, actually, I haven't started really with 0. I started with 1, finding one match, one value for a given query in that search exercise. Sorry. And then I started with 1, then I did the 0 case, I guess, and then I worked on the many, and then boundaries, interfaces. But essentially those are the things that we followed in order to build the entire solution. In terms of refactoring, it was really interesting using this approach, that the refactoring step was really obvious and really interesting at this point. So we were doing really small iterations in the TDD loop. So we would go with a green test, then make it, fake it till you make it, as we say. So we would just ramp up whatever that would make the test green. So we covered that behavior, and now we're gonna make the code better. So we would, for example, make it actually work, then look for duplication, improve the names, and essentially that remove duplication and improve names is a loop that that we follow in order to get to the 4 elements of the simple design. And then by removing duplication, we are actually coming up with abstractions. And then by improving names, we're also seeing where to push different responsibilities and also catch duplication. So also another thing is that as we were evolving with the tests, the test setup, as we were covering more things, for example, we started with one, then zero, then many, and then the boundaries. As we were going and evolving this design, making more collaborators, our test setup was also increasing, which is not particularly bad thing. That's okay. And we saw also different things and different techniques that we can use there. For example, using the fakes, using the stubs, as we did, for example, with I explained that with a validator. I didn't do the stub, but I could have done like passing validator or a failing validator and that kind of things. But I think I've done that for somewhere else down there. I've done like I think maybe at a contract test. Anyway, it was increasing, and luckily in Kotlin or Java, or I would assume that all the statically typed languages support that. Like the actual tool, the IDE, was doing this refactoring for us. So we didn't put much effort. But I can assume that in different languages, for example, it might be more effort. So as I said, for the Ouside-In, we would, for example, maintain a, let's say, a setup script if we are using mocks and stuff. The same trade-off is happening now here, for example. We would anyway have to maintain the tests. So the tests are not something that you would write once and forget. They're also things that you always have to put attention to and sort of maintain them and keep them. So the thing is that the thing is then to put as little effort as possible in maintaining the tests, but it's not something that you can abandon entirely. Another thing that is really interesting in this approach is that we saw zero mocks, so no mocking at all, but we used sort of more extensively, I would say, fakes or stubs and then these other test doubles, and so essentially, if you compare these test doubles with the mocks, we use them in order to generate some behavior that might or might not be interesting for a particular test. So what I'm saying is that if I have a test that I want to check a behavior, and then I have a collaborator that I don't care at the particular test, but I just need to supply, I might use, for example, a stub, let's say, or a dummy. Then also another interesting point with this approach was that we were all the time running all the tests. So on like after each refactoring or doing any step or like writing new tests, we ran all the tests, and then at any point of time we were able to see where we are, because the tests were running really fast, like with a blink of an eye. And that's actually one of the differences between the Ouside-In and the inside out in terms of like having mocking libraries. If you're doing the Ouside-In, I'm not saying that it's mandatory to use mocking libraries. We could go without them, but the thing is that something that was sort of obvious between these two approaches in the context of these exercises that I've recorded, this is something that was sort of obvious to see. The tests were way faster because there were no mocking libraries, and I was able to run all the tests all the time. So that's sort of in a nutshell what was the differences between these approaches that we saw in these exercises. And I think was a sort of, I'm curious to see what do you think about this. And I didn't get much feedback in terms of the differences between these, but I had really positive and good feedback in terms of this series being useful and valuable for many of you, which makes me really happy and keeps me motivated to go on. So as I said, this is basically I couldn't go any longer with, like, for example, explaining these are the basics of test-driven development, and I think I've done a good job presenting them to you. And now it's a matter of really working hard in order to practice more and more and then grasp more. That's why I said, when I was presenting in some of the videos, I said, like, you have to code along. It's not something that you can watch a video and then you learn. You have to code along and then try different things on your own to see, for example, to get all these, different approaches and different things to click better, and then you'll understand it better, and then that's the way to go forward. So I think I don't have much to present more in terms of these techniques and stuff, but I do believe that there are other things that we can learn all the way together using the test-driven development approach and all these other extreme programming practices to build a real-world product that we can ship to actual real customers and then get some feedback from them and then drive the entire thing to some point, to some extent, to see how that's gonna go in a real life. So that's what I'm planning to do for, like, starting from the next episode onward. We'll see how that goes. I hope that you're gonna stay with me and that you will find value there as well. Also, give some feedback. Tell me your ideas, and hope this is gonna be an interesting journey together. Thank you so much for the time and the attention. I'm gonna catch you in some of the next episodes. Thank you.